Our favorite darling of the crypto world, Lucas, Polymarket. Look at this. This has got to be like a 20 to what 50x rip in their volume. So we're looking at this on Dune Analytics, and I think we might take a few minutes just to talk about what this platform is. But Dune Analytics essentially allows you to introspect various things about blockchain and crypto. And so I first caught wind of what's going on Polymarket specifically with respect to this when this guy, Nick, posted it out and said there was a significant amount of volume that spike that had happened. And I thought, well, let's just pull it up on Polymarket in case we want to look at some other aspects of it. But I mean, this really has found its feet in the election. And I think when I was looking at Polymarket, the election stuff has driven most of this. So this somewhat good news for Polymarket that they're getting some traction. But I think after the election, I'm betting that I wonder if there's a bet on there about Polymarket. Will Polymarket's volume drop to almost zero or back to zero when the election ends because they haven't been able to find a market for anything outside of election speculation?
Oh, I doubt it. I would guess that it continues to rise. I mean, maybe it'll hit a trough afterwards, but I mean, you can add more than just electoral questions on Polymarket. And
You can. I'm just saying that the only footing they've found is in this. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was a lot of wash trades or something.
oh,
Because
it could also be because it seems that nobody trusts polls anymore, and more eyes are turning to Polymarket. So it could be PACs and super PACs are pouring money into Polymarket to make their candidates seem more favorable, both with the presidents and also down ballot. I haven't been following down ballot races on Polymarket, but you can see the focus that so many politicians put towards both marketing and towards polls coalescing here on Polymarket. But yeah,
I wonder if one of the ways that you could actually start to game what's going on Polymarket would be to bet both sides and just consider that the spread is your lost money or whatever it costs to try and pump up a specific direction.
now that's getting a little bit complicated for me. That sounds like you want to be over on Solana.
Well, I just can't believe that there's that many people that have suddenly decided that this is how they want to place bets. But betting's a big thing, and betting on the election seems to be a variety of different questions. So we can go back to Polymarket. I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, that almost all the volume on Polymarket right now is being driven by election style questions.
I was going to say, do they have any metrics on the questions that appear on their site? Because I mean, people
Yeah, I
like,
mean, if you just go to this top, right? So you can see it's dominated by U.S. politics.
I was wondering if they had some like bar graphs with categories, but yeah, they got sports, business, science, pop culture bets. What do they have under pop culture bets?
Probably a bunch of stuff that we're not going to know.
Yeah, things I'm not going to be interested
Ooh,
in.
highest grossing movie in 2024.
I don't even know any movies coming out in 2024. Um, but I do think that people everywhere love beer bets, and it's called Polymarket, but in my mind, I might call it beer bets, whether it be about elections or business or crypto or sports.
Well, in this particular crypto, this is all about marketing. I mean, it's like there's nothing that technically interesting here. It's just a way for people to pool money together and then bets to resolve. And I think even what happened with that Kennedy question that we had looked at is just so highly contentious. Like Kennedy clearly didn't drop out, but they resolved that question to yes, which to me it's such a political thing to have it resolved that way. It was contentious, and then what? Like, how did that contentiousness get resolved? Was it the voters? I didn't see so. It just seemed like it was a centralized play. So this to me seems like Polymarket needs to have more transparency in the way it resolves these questions, or it needs to have more scrutiny when they write these questions, such that it's unambiguous whether the thing resolves to yes or no, especially if it's going to be a quick yes or no question that they're betting on.
Well, I wonder what happens when people dispute it. What happens if they challenge it in a court? Um, is
Yeah, I don't know if there is a way to challenge it in a court.
I mean, I would. They probably have. There's probably in the terms of service some sort of protection against that. But at the same time, with the Robert Kennedy question, it's I don't know if
Well, for instance, look at this question, right? Let's just dive into one and kind of talk it through. Will this be over 90 minutes? So 90 minutes in what way, right? Like if we were to think about that Harris Walls interview, right? Apparently that thing was what 41 minutes, but only 18 minutes was published. So was it 41 minutes or 18 minutes? Because apparently they were in there for 41 minutes, but we only got to see 18 minutes. What if they had a question like this? Will the Kamala Harris interview be over 25 minutes? Well, it was, but it
yeah,
wasn't published.
I mean they. I what a question even. Will it be over 90 minutes? Surely they mean that the release, but you could see them getting into the with or without the commercials. I don't
And
know.
I think one of the reasons why I bring this up is because if you think about a platform like this, what it really needs is some sort of a distributed Oracle technology. And that is something that I think repeatedly comes up. One of the things that makes me very excited about this whole idea of a decentralized internet and people running their own infrastructure, because if you start to think about having something like that, a distributed Oracle that actually has a consensus mechanism where your Oracle is publishing an answer, and when that network of oracles comes to a consensus, that's how you resolve it. And so then it's getting down to more of like you have this Sybil resistant kind of a thing, and you can have some amount of decentralization in the way that you resolve these questions versus there's just some centralized authority that clicks the button one way or the other. And I think that's what's actually happening here. I don't think that there's much in the way of ability to petition or to get it reviewed or anything like that. It's once this gets resolved, you just pays out and then everybody moves on, regardless of how unhappy you might be with the outcome.
Well, they don't even have fine print, do they? Is there like a
Yeah,
more?
there is. Let me pull up that Kennedy one. We can go through what that fine print was because it actually had fine print on it that said something to the effect. What did they do with their search? You'd think that'd be like one of the main buttons on this site. There's
Uh,
the search button.
no, they want the main buttons to be gamble, bet here, yes
Search
or
by
no.
market, Kennedy. Oops, I could spell. Oh, and I probably have to look by resolved or something.
Yeah, I looked for it afterwards, and I couldn't even find it.
You'd think that'd be one of the other things that they'd show. Ended. No, ended recently.
Oh, there it is.
No, well, November. This is the one. Yeah. See, here's the additional content or the fine print, and then there was more of this, right? So here's all the fine print on it.
But that was the additional context afterwards, like during, like
Right. This was the fine print right here. I'm just saying. You asked a question. I'm saying yes, there is. Like
yeah,
the answer is yes.
yeah. Still, it talks about withdrawal. You would think that withdrawal meant from the ballot.
Right. And it was disputed, and then they just like I don't know what is this no dispute. So I guess Was there some kind of a vote? Like, I just don't see like what actually happened here. It's like this is not it's not obvious like how this actually went down. And to like I like Polymarket. I like this idea of having this kind of a thing, but I think that there's improvements that need to be made, and there needs to be some kind of process. And I don't know, is the right word adjudication, like for people that feel they've been wronged in some way? Because I'll tell you what, if I'd have bet no on this, I'd be very unhappy to have lost my money when I'm sure that he did not drop out, because he's still on the ballot and the Democrats are keeping him on the ballot. So what does it mean to be dropped out if you're on the ballot and he's still running his campaign?
Yeah, not only that, but now it's not as if um, I mean, even campaigning for Trump, it's not as if he's less out of the public eye, and if his chances, I mean, his chances for being voted for by more people may have gone up with moving over to the Trump campaign.
Definitely went up, because the Trump campaign is now explicitly saying vote for Kennedy in particular states, because there's no way that Kamala could possibly ever carry that state in any world, because there are people who are just never going to get that message about Kennedy. They're going to vote for whoever the Republican nominee is. And because of that, this tiny amount of bleed off that Kennedy is going to get by the people who actually hear that message is important for Kennedy, but it's not going to cause Trump to lose that particular state's electoral votes. So yes, he's definitely going to get more votes as a result of what he did, and that's probably going to put that third party on the ballot for the next cycle.
Well, he's also getting more exposure now because he's being carried and interviewed um, by the larger networks. I mean, Fox has had him on several times since he moved over to the Trump campaign, and he was absent from them all. So,
Right. So all of this is to point out, well, regardless of this, excitement in Polymarket and the fact that they're having all of this, and it's mostly driven by politics. I'm just like telling you that flat out. That's like, I think it's 70 to 80% of the market on Polymarket is these political questions are driving most of the big bets. And this isn't even a big bet. This is tiny on Polymarket. It's a couple 100,000. They've got some much bigger things going on out there.
well, and another thought that occurs to mind, like, was it? I can't believe they actually settled it before November, before October, before November the 1st, because what if he re-enters? And not only that, but if Polymarket is custodying these funds, what are they doing with the money in the meantime? You would have think that they would have wanted to hold on to the money as long as possible.
See, look at this election. It's like 80 to 90%. It's like
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is this is this is entirely being driven by this.
What about the sports side of it? Is the sports side jumping up with Monday Night Football coming around the corner?
I don't think so. I think sports betting is a different thing, and I don't think it's Polymarket's shtick. They could probably try to go in that direction, but I think sports betting is pretty well captured market. If you're going to do that, you're probably going to do it with established bookies in Vegas and whatever. There's Sports Kings and DraftKings and all that kind of crap. I doubt that Polymarket could really hit a stride there. I think this is one of the reasons why Polymarket is doing well with this, is because what's the alternative? There really isn't one. I don't think the Las Vegas guys really get into election questions. This fringy election style prediction markets is where Polymarket has found its stride.
Well, another question that occurs to me is it not illegal to be betting in at least some states? Is there some sort of have states given up altogether on regulating online bets, or
I think they did. There was some significant legislation that's happened recently that made sports betting very prevalent. It used to be that we kept betting out of sports, and I famously, do you remember when Pete Rose got in big trouble for betting on baseball?
absolutely? Um, there was recently I saw I believe a basketball player who was throwing games, who got thrown out of, was it the NBA? Did you happen to see that? I don't recall his name. But yeah, Pete Rose got thrown out. I mean, used to be you couldn't even buy liquor, much less cannabis or marijuana. It's a different America that we live in, and not just with regards to the machinations of the Democrat and Republican parties. Was it a DraftKings? Was it? Because I remember the DraftKings. There was some sort of legend or hoopla about them maybe a couple of years ago. That was probably whenever sports betting got legalized. Andrew says predicted, so maybe it was. Maybe that was the. I don't know. I don't know. But I was a bit surprised. But that this was legal to begin with, but not that surprised, because we have all the tools to do so. And how they're going to stop it? Look at Brazil stopping access to X, and then suddenly discovering what a VPN is.
So this is a Polymarket competitor, huh?
Oh, is this a Polymarket competitor?
Looks like it.
Hmm.
Huh. All right, should we move on to our next topic? We've got
Yes.
yet
Yeah.
another thing that we wanted to look at, and that's just as we continue to broaden our understanding of some of these different crypto tokens. I guess this one should not be a surprise, but it probably is to a lot of people that Solana has a pretty substantive inflation. And it's not like this is a short thing. Like, I think that this is going to be the way Solana operates for a significant amount of time. And so when you see things like coin market cap and Solana's in a really high position with respect to its market cap. I mean, partially this is just due to what's going on here. This is a super high inflationary pressure. A lot of these Solana tokens get created every single day.
It's an unbelievable number of Solana tokens that are created. So
You know, it would be funny to see the chart of the USD shitcoin versus Solana. Which one has higher inflationary pressure?
you mean the Circle USD
No,
shitcoin?
I'm talking about the actual USD shitcoin, the real one.
Well,
Reminds me of that meme where it's like, which one? No, the real one, the dollar one.
there's a website for that. It's the debt clock, and it's unbelievable.
It
Um,
is unbelievable, and the amount of money that's getting thrown around and errantly given to organizations that really shouldn't be getting money from the U.S. and they can't even keep track of it.
well, it gets poured out everywhere. That would be a very interesting, to see the rates of inflation between the two. I, Solana has a variable rate of inflation, do they not? It's not a set rate of inflation. It has, I believe, three different pegs to what it's inflating against, but I don't think any of them is the USD shitcoin.
Well, and I think some of these things are a little disingenuous too, because here we're comparing ETH, inflated 160 million, and Bitcoin inflates 215 million. Bitcoin is at almost zero inflation at this point because almost every Bitcoin that's going to be issued has already been issued. I think we're at like 94, 95% of all Bitcoin having been created. So it's disingenuous because the price of Bitcoin is so high. So to say that these numbers are close in fiat, I guess, but if you compare, the total amount on the network versus the amount that already existed, you know what I mean? The rate of growth, Bitcoin is almost at zero. And I think ETH is actually a negative world. So, this is not an apples to apples comparison because Solana is just in a completely inflationary mode. And I don't think that ever changes based on the tokenomics of Solana. versus ETH is actually in a deflationary. But the problem with ETH deflationary is that that requires you to actually spend gas. And we all know that ETH is in like a downturn super cycle on gas used because everybody's using the L2s. So like ETH is kind of a what is it, a victim of its own success in the way that they've allowed the thing to scale. So now nobody uses the L1 on ETH anymore.
Well, with ETH, can you actually burn ETH? Like, I believe you can actually burn Solana because the rent is not paid for it. And I assume that means you can actually burn Sol. But in ETH, isn't it not just sent to an address that supposedly nobody has a key for?
Um, well, ETH has a burn mechanism, particularly based on its new consensus mechanism since they went to proof of stake. So some amount of gas on Ethereum gets burned.
But
This
I thought on ETH also due to the account model that just meant sent to an address that nobody had a key for.
No, I think it's part of the protocol now, and that's usually what burn means is that it's sent to an address for which there is no key possible, or it's infeasible to find such a key. Like usually it's 0000 or something like that, or the equivalent thereof. But this is what I'm talking about on gas. I think I'm looking at the right thing. Yeah, look, daily gas use, and the gas has just gone to almost zero. So there was a time where miners were making a lot of money off of this, and consensus validators were making a lot of money. But now it's gone down substantively.
Yeah, I saw a chart with the daily transactions of some of the block fees recently, and ETH had quite a drop on ETH. I hadn't really thought about it being about uh, the the layer two soaking up that traffic, but it makes sense that they're soaking it up. But don't um, I haven't heard that much about Base nor Polygon recently, so I wondered if if crypto was becoming a place where people were hodling Bitcoin and the NFT market had sort of stalled out for now. Um, there seems to be a lot of traction with Solana and shitcoins or meme coins, but I don't know. I don't see a lot of NFT projects on many of the chains at all anymore. So there are very few left on Solana, and I haven't heard of a lot of ruckus on especially Base or Polygon. A little bit on Ethereum still, which I think that those projects are benefit from the gas fees on ETH. So, Rusty, have you been following NFT projects across the chains? Are you seeing any bumps in any of those?
Not really any big bumps in any new collections. I still see some people still trying to create NFTs and do things within the blockchain within the technology, but you don't really see any more, 100 ETH Bored Ape yacht sales. You don't really see too many super high CryptoPunk sales going off all the time. The volume and the market of the NFTs has significantly dropped. It seems that it's a lot harder to get people to keep wanting to buy the same thing if it doesn't really do anything for you.
Well, if you want to get answers to these types of questions, Lucas, I would point you at Dune Analytics. Like I don't have stock in this company. I don't know how these things particularly get monetized. So I'm not pushing it for any particular personal interest, but these guys do a good job of putting together charts like this. So if you wanted to ask a question about weekly NFT volume in the past 2 years, there you go. Like this guy put together a chart, and that question's already answered. You can see that there was a significant amount back in the day by week, and here we're down to almost zero.
When was it that FTX went under? Was it was November of 2022, wasn't it?
I do not have that information right at my fingertips, but I'll see if I can find it.
It was sometime around November 2022. And you can see it reflected right there. Looks like people were selling all their NFTs for a while.
Yep, November 2022, and that's not on the screen right now. That's 2023 is what we're looking at there.
Well, no, it goes all the way back to November 2022. Look at that the orange
Oh, yeah.
spike.
Yeah, I guess you're right. But that doesn't look like there was actually that much volume at that point.
Well, crypto had been stalling after the 2020 sort of surge in interest, and when I look at that, it says to me that after FTX collapsed, everybody was selling all of their assets.
If there's any real narrative here, it's the fall of OpenSea. Look at this. OpenSea was what, like 50% of the market at one point, and then Blur just destroyed them.
Yeah.
I mean, Blur was nothing. Look at this. OpenSea had the entire market. This must have been when Aleph started complaining about them.
Yeah.
Back when they take royalties away and all that good stuff.
Well, that does absolutely reflect their change in contracts to take royalties away, which was, it's and I've never used Blur. I'm actually surprised to see it so prominent in there. Magic Eden also.
Yeah, but they're a tiny player. I mean, this tells the story of the big fight between Blur and OpenSea just absolutely shooting themselves in the foot.
Well, it would be, is this just for Ethereum, or is this for all the different blockchains?
It's the Ethereum NFT market. There's no NFT activity on any other blockchain.
Solana and Cardano had a large NFT communities, and Magic Eden was
I think when we talk about large, it's
okay.
Large for their chain, but not large compared to ETH. I don't think. No.
I think okay, fine. I'll give you that. I'm not gonna.
Let's see if there's a chart for that. Maybe there is. Who knows?
There probably is, but I'm already ceding the argument. Before I'm proven wrong, I'm ceding the argument.
Nothing immediately pops up. Nobody cares about that.
Oh yeah, there's a Pump.fun on ETH now too. So
yeah, that's the third thing we're going to talk about here. But this is the most disingenuous chart. Cumulative pump tokens. This of course this number has to go up. So silly. Because like if it's cumulative, then if there's anything that happens the next day, it's going to add to the chart. So that doesn't mean anything.
I want to the number that I think is most interesting when it comes to crypto tokens, to meme coins, is the amount of the length of their life. They live longer than mosquitoes, but I believe it's shorter than a housefly.
That would be an interesting thing, is like graphing on Dune the mean time to rug for Pump.fun. MTTR, mean time to rug.
I think it's like 3 or 4 hours. Like I think by a large percentage of them are 3 to 4 hours. Aleph knows this off the top of his head too. He's not here to tell us, but
clearly we're talking about this now, so let's at least jump into it, and we'll see where that topic takes us, because we do have a Pump.fun that is now on ETH. I think it's called this Ethervista.
And was Pump.fun bringing something, or Pump.fun bringing something besides just making a website that was making it easy to make meme coins on Solana? Was there anything to Pump.fun besides that?
Well, I think it also had some mechanisms where you could register details about the token that you created, and if memory serves, they were making more money off the token registration fees than they were off anything else, because I think it was like $100 or something like that to register the token. And since there are so many that are getting created, that that $100 fee was actually pretty substantive.
Yeah, especially if you think of if it's true that that there was an average of what, a 3 to 4 hour life of those coins. So and is Pump.fun on Ethereum? Because I mean, it seems that also part of its success over on Solana was the low gas fee on Solana. So I wonder what is drawing them or meme coin users back to Ethereum. Low gas fees, I guess.
Well, here's the answer to the question that we just asked. Like, how much is Pump.fun making on fees? So this is always the case. You sell shovels, not necessarily like participate in the market, but just like help make the market a thing and make a substantial amount of money. So I think it's Pump.fun's the one that's making all the money in this market. They created the site, made it easy to make a token. So yeah, this is getting replicated all over the place. I think Solana, yeah, it was all about the low fees on the trade. So it'll be interesting to see if this plays out and brings a bunch of volume back to Ethereum.
Well, and I still see political tokens constantly on my feed. So I guess memes never die. But I don't know. I don't play in that casino. I'm more like to join Polymarket before I ever start buying and selling all these meme coins.
I can't wait for that, Lucas. I still am somewhat inclined to have our show start doing stuff on Polymarket because
You mentioned that. I think that would be a lot of fun to put some money into some questions. You could probably see me lose my cool over a. I mean, if I had money in the Bobby bet on the November pullout, I would have written screeds and screeds pages on the internet as to why it should have been no and why the question should still be open. So that could be an endless amount of entertainment.
yeah, it's too bad you didn't have stake in the game because then you'd have more of a position to actually be saying such things. Apparently, that's just still the weirdest thing about that particular question was that this was no dispute. Like, so everybody who bet, the opposite direction here must not have cared about, whatever amount they bet and lost out on. They're just like, nope, we'll take it.
So I'm a late adopter because I want to know. I want to see some of this happen before I push my blood pressure because I'm upset about how it works. So, and I also did have questions about the legality of online gambling. I got. I guess if the states have complaints about it, they're not shutting it off or they're not doing anything about crypto.
Oh, about the sports betting?
I mean, sports betting, but whether it be about sports or about anything else, I assume that more states would have laws against still against online gambling, but maybe you can play the lotto, you can gamble, you can buy weed and liquor wherever the hell you want anymore. Just don't say certain words on social media. That's the only thing that we're concerned about.
Well, apparently you can thank the 2018 U.S. Supreme Court ruling.
Oh, so it did go all the way up to the Supreme Court. And what did the Supreme Court say? They said a minimum age, sports betting legalities. Yeah, see, I'm in Texas. It's illegal.
It's illegal in Minnesota too.
Well,
but not illegal in Colorado. So there you go. I'm hovering over the wrong one though.
Yeah, Rusty is he can place our Politify bets from Colorado.
So it's Murphy versus the National Collegiate Athletic Association.
The NCAA. And, also shocking to me that the NCAA like pays their players now, or allows them to monetize their names, their trademarks.
It'd be interesting to read why they thought that this was okay. Again, a very political decision here. So how was the Supreme Court influenced to decide this was okay suddenly?
I'm definitely going to dig into that, because the jurisdiction over money, the dollar, the national banking system, is the same questions are roused by questions of gambling and lotteries. And I was sort of operating off of understanding about gambling in states and lotteries in states. Colorado has a lottery. It was passed by referendum. Colorado has gambling in certain towns, but that was, I believe, also passed by referendum, and that was on the heels of, a lot of Native American reservations, with their sovereignty from the state in which they reside, have long legalized and run casinos. Some of them lottos, but yeah, it'll be very interesting to pull this Supreme Court. I hadn't really thought about it before, but as we were talking about Polymarket, I just couldn't help. It was an itch I had to scratch. How Polymarket gets away with operating everywhere, and that Texas doesn't do something about it. If it's illegal in Texas, you would think that they would turn off the Polymarket site from.
I think I think the states have to go out there and enforce it. I think from Polymarket's perspective, they probably are like, well, whatever, we're gonna not start doing stuff until we're forced to do it, because they want to grow. So that's that same old thing, right? It's no different than when Uber was clearly running an illegal taxi service in New York, and nobody cared. So things can be illegal, and if there's no enforcement action, I guess then it doesn't matter.
I'm often thinking about that, because, and this is why I think it's so important to make distinctions between legislation and law, because when legislation is not enforced, it's not law. And this
this goes back to that other discussion that we had about that there are people who are in power can just decide not to adhere to the law at all, and there's no ramifications, there's no repercussion for that. So even if you get a bunch of people together, they go to Congress or their state legislature, they pass a law, if then there are people who are in power and they just decide that they are going to ignore the law, there's nothing you can do. They can just ignore it if they feel like it.
Well, this is why I think Brazil repealed the fine that they had for using VPNs so quickly.
Wait, that's news. I didn't hear that. There was a fine and they repealed it? That just happened?
Like $9,000 a day if you were caught using a VPN in the wake of their canceling or they're restricting access to X, which had to do with I forget what they wanted X to ban, or I forget what was happening there, but some judge in Brazil got upset with X, the platform, Twitter, and banned it all across the nation of Brazil. And not only that, banned the use of VPNs to access X. And there was a $10,000 fine per day for anyone that was using a VPN to access X. And that like existed for 3 days, and then it was repealed. So, and I imagine due largely to the part they realized that it was too hard to track and figure out who was using VPNs. So a terrible thing if you're trying to tell people something to do is to tell them that you're going to do something that you can't. So
Yeah, be careful about votes you can't win and things that you can't enforce. Especially since I think another thing that happened was people started turning on VPNs into Brazil just to mess with these guys. I heard quite a bit about that.
Oh yeah, and I mean, check Elon's tweets because there are a bunch of people all around the world who were directing all of their traffic through VPNs to Brazil. So they probably got slammed with more traffic than they've ever seen before in the wake of that decision.
Well, it's really interesting to see Musk getting into all of these fights because of Starlink. You know, the fact that he provides the ability for the free flow of information, if long as you have line of sight to the sky, that's a pretty big deal. Smuggling those dishes around into different places must be quite the thing. Because if you can get that into the country, then you essentially have a way around that
You know,
gated information that that a country might be able to impose otherwise because they control the actual lines. But if you've got free sight to the sky and Starlink will give you unfettered access to the internet, that's a huge thing.
well, and Starlink donated thousands of uh, of Starlink devices for the schools all across Brazil, and especially um, in the non-coastal regions that they don't have a lot of internet access to. So,
But if you're going to try to control the populace, you definitely wouldn't want Elon Musk airdropping Starlink devices into your country because
well,
can't
they
take that
were,
back.
yeah, right. Well, they didn't think about that, and you know,
I wonder if China is allowing Musk to airdrop Starlink devices into China.
well, if China isn't, and I'm not sure that I don't know if they are. I doubt that they are because they do think about that. But I do
Well,
believe,
they're probably made in China first off, so their ability to copy and make bootleg Starlink devices is probably high. I mean, I don't know what sort of a cryptographic signature you need to be able to actually get on there, but like, or if it's just if you have the right hardware, it's more like ham radio and just have to pay for the subscription.
I don't know, but I do think that the Starlink system. Look up if you can the number of there was a post I saw on Twitter just recently about the number of Starlink satellites, and it's in the thousands. There are Starlink satellites everywhere, and it is going to be the lowest level latency network that there is because the transmission from transmission across copper lines is a lot higher, or even fiber lines takes a lot longer than it does than beaming the information from satellite to satellite via a laser. So Elon has a global network, has handed out the receivers to many countries for their libraries, for their schools, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be a it's going to have as much impact as Twitter had in 2008 in the likes of the Arab Spring, because just as Brazil just found out that they could not control the narrative, and I bet the access to Starlinks had everything to do with that.
This definitely is more complex than any kind of ham radio thing. It's this OFDM, like a cross between Wi-Fi and 5G.
Hmm.
Closely guarded secret.
Understatement of the day.
Well, I'm not sure that that secret is really the sauce that keeps you from competing with Starlink. I mean, isn't it having to put umpteen numbers of satellites into orbit? Starlink's probably the only one that can even come close to thinking about doing that. Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin, have they put even one thing into space yet?
Did you see that Blue Origin had the original patent for landing a rocket back on a barge? Um, but no, I don't know that Blue Origin has. It seems to have stalled out. But but what's the space? Oh, SpaceX. They launched 3 rockets in a day a couple of weeks ago. So, and they're going to save the
looks like they're doing something, but why is this only? Let's see. They did launch something. See, but this is, I mean, look, like 111. It's like SpaceX does this every day. Crude. This is still this putting people into space for tourism. Yeah, I don't think there's a way that anybody can compete with SpaceX's lead in getting material up into space unless somebody comes up with one of them slingshots or rail guns.
The space elevator. Space
Well,
elevator.
no, I think it's a rail gun, the one that's been thought about. That's way more feasible, right? You just essentially rotate it super fast on the ground, and then you shoot it out like a gun, kind of parallel to the Earth. And as long as it has enough speed, it'll just get out of the the gravity well because it's going that fast. And you can do that by essentially just putting it through a big rotational thing that's on the ground and then shooting it out of the barrel of a gun. As long as it has a high enough velocity coming out the end of it, it'll make it into space.
I've heard of rail gun, but I did not. I didn't realize that's what. I didn't realize it was a graviton with an exit door. Did you see the Boeing Starliner was making some crazy sounds recently? Sounded like sonar, and the one of the astronauts who is currently in the International Space Station. I don't know if they posted it to Twitter or somebody else posted it to Twitter, but you could listen to these strange sonar sounds that are coming out of the Boeing Starliner as it gathers dust.
Yeah, here's a article about it.
An electromagnetic railgun. And why do they call it a railgun?
Well, railgun is referring to a type of projectile firer that uses magnets to accelerate whatever the payload or the bullet out of it instead of using some sort of an explosive thing. And the reason that the railgun technology is kind of interesting is because you can continuously accelerate the payload along the entire length of the barrel because you can keep pushing it along versus if you have some sort of an explosion that powers the bullet, you can only do that once because once the explosion's gone off, then the bullet's flying away. But if you use electromagnets, you can keep pushing it forward. You can keep making it go faster. And so the idea with these is that you have this huge coil, and that coil, since it's on the ground, it can be really, really long. So you can keep accelerating it through this, barrel, which is in a spiral essentially. And then at the very end of it, you have it go straight, and then it goes out. And since you're using electromagnets, it's just like those what's it called? Those maglev trains. It's not actually able to touch the barrel at all. Like the magnets are keeping it away from there. So you're accelerating it, you're keeping it away. It's almost frictionless, and you can accelerate it really, really fast and make it get out of the gravity well. So like
Well,
this plane or whatever could be in the payload.
I'm gonna look up some YouTube videos on the railgun because I don't pay that much attention to the launching of satellites and the we're going to be on Mars in 2 years.
Yeah, see, here's an example of this.
That's a railgun, eh?
Yeah, it's just a tube, and then it's got electromagnets in it. It's just a big electrical.
Well, I pictured as you were describing it earlier, there being some sort of centrifugal, sort of like the super collider, so it could go in a circle as it built up velocity, and then let it exit that.
I remember the first time I ever heard about these was from a role-playing game called Rifts. So they had these special suits of armor, and they would have a rail gun that was attached to it, and so these guys would step up in these suits, and they'd have this rail gun, and they actually had to drive pylons into the ground to be able to make this thing so that it didn't kick you backwards. So it had to reinforce it. So this is the first time I ever heard about it. But yeah.
Did you ever follow Orbital Space Systems and their concept of like launching spacecraft off of aircraft?
No, I didn't hear about that.
I don't know if they were ever successful in doing so, but part of the idea
Is it these guys? Orbital
is
Space?
yeah, probably. Yep, that's them. But they were converting Boeing's and Lockheed's, I believe the Lockheed TriStar, into platforms for launching space shuttles off of. And I think they did used to launch a lot of satellites off of them.
We don't hear enough about Spaceforce. One of these days, we might have to dig into Spaceforce and see what's really going on there. Whatever happened? We have another arm of the U.S. government's military is operating in space, but like, what are they actually doing?
I mean, it has to be with an eye towards. It has to be an eye towards concerns about this securing both the GPS satellites, but also making sure that the United States satellites can communicate faster than anyone else, right?
Or we have a name for our Space Force now. They're called Guardians.
I was unaware. I was unaware.
This was created by Trump, right? Didn't Trump create the Space Force?
Yeah, Trump created the Space Force, but I haven't heard anything about the Space Force since there was all the concern about it. But whenever we were reading Soft War and sort of prepping for that discussion, I thought a little bit that Space Force probably was not so harebrained and crazy. You hear Trump also constantly referring to Israel's Iron Dome and talking about that the United States needs the same system. And it would seem that in the world of both satellites and drone technology, that having defense capabilities beyond the stratosphere are going to be important. But I don't know what's going on there technology-wise.
Protecting satellites.
Yeah, there you go. Protecting satellites. I wonder if they rescue stranded astronauts too.
Look at all this junk in space.
Maybe a more furtive political campaign would have been to launch the Space Janitor program and to arm them with lasers with their rail guns. But yeah, we got a lot of junk in space. So flies around high rates of speed and can run into some of our space equipment out there. Have we heard any news from the James Webb Telescope? That was the big. Did you ever see much about that whenever they were launching it? It's kind of impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I still see photos that come out of stuff that's snapping pictures of. Yeah, it's awesome. It's doing great stuff.
Yeah, I have an idea. We're going to find out the universe is a ball too. Actually, we've seen some projections of what the universe looks like now. But anyway, what are the two red dots in there, by the way?
I think there's things you can click on.
Okay.
I found a visualization of all the junk in space.
Look at that. That is unbelievable. So
That's a lot of stuff in space.
I wonder how much of that stuff gets damaged by like meteors or comets. You always hear like everything flying through space and coming into the Earth's orbit and like never actually reaching the ground. Like I wonder how much of that stuff just gets like taken out by a random comet or asteroid.
Well, quite a bit, I imagine, since all this stuff that's in red is debris. Man, it's got to be hard to just even launch something through this mess. I know that this is not well visualized. Like I don't think it's quite as dense because they're showing it in a way that like we can kind of reason about it. I don't think it's quite as bad as this.
you know, once we clean up the plastic gyres in the Pacific Ocean, they're going to launch those ships with a railgun into space to use magnets to collect all the metal dust that's swirling.
So if our society ever collapsed, and then later some technological civilization like reemerged and they found all this garbage in space, would they'd have to admit that we actually were capable of getting this stuff out there unless they had some explanation of a natural phenomenon for why there's all this junk in space.
They would probably attribute it to the comet that hit the Yucatan, or the asteroid that hit the Yucatan, whatever. Asteroid, not a comet. Do you ever? Are you familiar with and it's called Cheech Love, by the way. Are you familiar with the Cheech Love? Have you ever looked into that? Curious Day in the History of the Earth.
No.
Oh, it's good. It's good. When I say the Cheech Love comet, are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
I'm not. No.
Well, if you look in the Gulf of Mexico and out on the thumb of the Yucatan, you can see, and especially if you're looking on Google Earth, you can see where, I don't know the time period of when it impacted, but the asteroid that struck the Earth that probably was the death knell of dinosaurs and reptiles and amphibians and sort of the dawn of mammals was a great comet that struck the world, and it's called Cheech Love. And in like 94, there was an archaeologist, a Mexican archaeologist, and he could see this layer of iridium, which if you drive through Colorado or anywhere you probably have maybe some in Minnesota, certainly in Montana and Wyoming, in road cuts, you can look over and you can see this white band in the stratification of the rock layers, and that white band is called the K2 layer, and that was from the impact of that crater, and it buried the entire world in clouds and volcanic eruptions for a long time afterwards. And are you familiar with any like fossil beds in South Dakota? I forget what they're called off the top of my head.
I mean, just vaguely, I know the idea, but like I couldn't name one right off the top.
Well, that was the crest of the tidal wave when the comet or the asteroid Cheech Love struck Mexico, and part of the reason. Anyway, look into them sometime, because you can also see like mammals interlaced with a lot of reptiles and dinosaurs, quote unquote dinosaurs, and that they were all washed up there from that great tidal wave. So interesting stuff.
Right on. Well, let's wrap it up for today. Tomorrow we're going to talk some more about Cardano. So we'll be talking about digital identity and Midnight Network. So we'll focus on Cardano again tomorrow.
All right, looking forward to it. See y'all tomorrow.